I'd really like you to help me welcome our next speakers, Carilu Dietrich, who's the Vice President of Corporate Marketing at Atlassian, and Suzanne DiBianca, President and co-founder of Salesforce.org, who are going to talk about how doing well equates to doing good. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. It's great to be here. I'm really honored to be on the agenda with one of my favorite people and one of my most favorite companies. Carilu and I were talking as we came in, and just curious, show of hands, how many people that are here represent the social sector? Not the corporation sector, but the social sector. Okay, so about a quarter. And then how many of you are from corporations? Okay, so about half. And if your company is over 1,000 people, raise your hand. Oh, most of you. Okay, let me ask, over 10,000. Okay, so that's really cool because I think we have a good, you're gonna hear from a great range of speakers. We just heard from Microsoft, who we've learned quite a lot from. The TEALS program, I can't say how good it is and how much our engineers love it. And I think that we can learn a lot from each other. They represent the big company view. We have me from Salesforce, who kind of represents the medium becoming big company view. And then we have Carilu, who represents the small becoming medium company. And hopefully we also have some of the smaller startup companies here as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. And mostly I'd like to turn it over to Carilu for the next couple minutes to tell us a little bit about Atlassian. Like what stage is your company, and then tell us a little bit about some of your philanthropy programs.
Yeah, so Atlassian is a business collaboration company behind Jira, HipChat, Confluence, and a number of formerly software developer collaboration tools now for all sorts of teams. We have like 1,500 worldwide employees and 50,000 companies. So a big, very medium size. Our philanthropy started very early. Our founders, we have two co-founder CEOs who decided they had been very blessed and wanted to start pledging 1% from the very beginning. So they pledged 1% of their equity, of their product, of their employee time, and of their profit when it was 1% of nothing. So it was an easy choice because they weren't giving anything up and they owned the whole company. And 13 years later, we've given away over $6 million of grants, $69 million of product, 10,000 employee hours, and the foundation is growing rapidly, and as different things happen in our business, more money will be available for our foundation.
That's great, and I think, like Salesforce, we also started very young. You create really a different kind of a company, and hopefully for many of the smaller companies that are here, and the leaders in those areas are having to get the fun job like you and I have had to be able to kind of steward that. So if I just think about that for a minute. 1,500 employees, $6 million in grants, 10,000 hours, and you are not yet a publicly traded company. We've read in the newspaper that Atlassian, has filed for an IPO as a unicorn company. I'm really excited about them to be able to tell their story. But it just goes to show what you can do with the assets and resources that you have at any size. And one thing I love about your philanthropy is how organically grown that it's been and still is. Can you just talk about that a little bit and some of the sort of strengths and weaknesses of that model?
So even though the founders pledged 1% at the beginning and are very active in our philanthropy, they run the company more like a duocracy and less like a bureaucracy. So the foundation is actually run by employees. There's a foundation council, and there are local council offices for each location where we have an office. And so there is a very democratic strategy that happens over time that sometimes is wonderful because we get to support so many different ideas, like our first speaker was discussing with the matching grants. Also can be challenging where we want to make a bigger focused impact, and there's a lot of heated debate. One of the things I would say is most notable for me is that pledging 1% isn't just about a program that was set up with an office that monitors it, but is really become part of the entire culture of the company. So when I joined Atlassian, I joined from Oracle, which has a great foundation. Colleen Cassidy is here. But every individual employee was less involved. And at Atlassian, there's charity mixers. There was one I missed this morning. There's trips where people pay their own way to Cambodia to visit Room to Read. There are employees that are trying to set up a Pledge 1% for employee equity so that each employee is donating. So it's really part of the fabric, and we have been named #2 best place to work in the US this year, and #1 2 years in a row in Australia. And I think that having philanthropy be a ingrained part of the culture where everyone is responsible and has a seat at the table is a huge part of that success.
And what do you, I've just been so impressed in terms of the commitment that you guys have made and the way that you've taken it on really in a democratic way. My own experience is it has to be a balance of that. And you've balanced it, I think, really beautifully. And you talked a little bit about what it's done for the employees of the company, but also curious on how it spans other sort of other elements of the company. So you sit in marketing, for example. What do you think it's done or not done for the brand, for the customer relationships? Is there anything that you can share with people here that might be sort of helpful in that area?
I'm going to sound like a groupie because I always used to go, I've worked in technology for the last 15 years, and I go to Dreamforce and I see Mark Benioff spending 45 minutes of the start of his keynote talking about, we want to deliver fantastic product, we want to do a great job, but we also think there's a purpose to our lives, and so we've incorporated this thing, that thing, and this thing. And I've always felt like it made you feel like you were spending your money not just on a product that you wanted, but in a company you believed in. And I had a fantastic job at Oracle. I ran awareness advertising and got to write ads for the front page of the Wall Street Journal, the back page of The Economist. I did the TV ad for America's Cup. I interviewed with the CEO of Atlassian, and he was like, we want to advance humanity through the power of software. We think that software is going to change people's lives, and by making software, we can change the fabric of their lives, and by being good people and encouraging everyone in our company to be a good person, we can change lives. And what's resulted is that you have a bunch of people who are super competitive, super smart, that want to join a company because they feel like they have purpose and can also do well. And I think that really translates to the relationships that we build with our customers and our employees. But we just had our user conference, and 25% of the partners in our ecosystem joined Pledge 1%. And we were able to do that not just because of the event, but because the entire history of our company, we're always talking about building a company for growth and giving.
That's awesome. I did karaoke like this weekend, and so I'm having a really hard time not holding the mic like this. It's the last time I had a mic in my hand. So if I slip into that, give me a break. Hadn't done karaoke for a while. So anyway, the Pledge initiative. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that's been really fun to launch with you guys. We have the Tides Foundation also that's here. It was a test that we put together, Salesforce, Atlassian, and a great organization, Rally Software in Boulder, Colorado. And it's been really fun working on it. So why don't you just tell people what it is, where we are, and how they can get involved.
Yeah, so Mark Benioff has been touting 111 for years. I've been going to every conference to watch it. And we decided to pledge 1% 13 years ago, and our CEOs feel like it's one of the best decisions they ever made. So Suzanne and I wanted to figure out how to get other companies to pledge 1%, and we wanted to provide tools, a community, and encouragement of peers to join a movement, and both focused on big companies where the biggest impact can be made in the shortest period of time, but also startups. So we're focused on venture capitalists, we're focused on incubators, helping people pledge 1% when it's 1% of nothing. So pledge1%.org got started a year and a half ago, and last year on Giving Tuesday, we set the goal of recruiting 500 companies to pledge 1%. And we're really excited to say we've already passed that goal and are at 520 companies, and expect next year to raise the bar even farther to get this snowball going and have a real movement of companies pledging 1%.
Is anybody here a Pledge 1% company? Did anybody click the button? So I think you should click the button. Sorry, I'm doing it with the mic again. Because here's why. It doesn't matter what you call your philanthropy, how long you've been doing it, or what you're doing. What we're trying to do is build a movement. So any company has those assets. You're all using them. We just heard example from Microsoft. I'm sure you're going to hear them a lot over the next 3 days. And our goal is to take the myth out of it for entrepreneurs. And I think ultimately the game here is that the whole initiative will go away in 10 years. Done. I don't want to work on this for more than a decade, which is why Carilu is saying we're working at the front end of the pipeline, right? We're working with the Y Combinators and the venture capitalists. And now is the moment where this is a groundswell. It's sort of why we're at 520 companies with very little marketing, surpassing the goal that we set just less than a year ago. So I would love support, because we pledged, like Carilu, equity, time, people 15 years ago. But we sort of signed up as a company because we want to be known. We want to help sort of spark the movement. So I would just say, we don't care if you're doing equity or product or people or all three or one of them or profit. But what we're trying to do is create a groundswell and a movement, and we're trying to make it easy for entrepreneurs to get going and take the myth that it's hard. So I guess the other thing I would ask, I would just love anybody who wants to join the movement. It's not hard to do. Pledge1%.org. You click the button. You're part of the movement. We're not going to come after you and ask you for, all of your sort of specific details in a 6-year period to give to the New York Times. We'll do measurement and evaluation, but it's right now we're just kind of building a movement. And the other thing that I'll just say quickly is that you talked about your users conference and signing 25%. So how many people here do users conference or customer events or like that? Like 10% of you. I sort of totally believe that if 50% of the room is made up of corporations. I would imagine that you do things with your customers, whether they're events. You may not do like a Dreamforce, but I think there's opportunity to engage the ecosystem. So we have 65% of our venture companies sign up as 1% partners. You got 25% of your partners at your users conference. Can you just tell us like how you did that, what other people should do, and what they should be thinking about as it relates to their ecosystem, and why they would want to pitch this?
So one of the obstacles a lot of people I've talked to have had is just the smaller company you are, the more you're focused on just surviving, and you don't have time. You figure maybe you'll have a foundation somewhere. And I think it's really a close equivalent to traditions of philanthropy where you give money away at the end of your life, or the new movements of giving it away much earlier, even if it's less. And so really helping companies see that in our case, the founders pledged 1% and then didn't do anything. Like they didn't give any money away yet because they didn't have any money. And they had a couple employees, and every now and then they would like have a beer and code a website for someone. And so they thought of it as, they didn't even sign paperwork. So on Pledge 1%, we have some paperwork people can sign to get started. My CEOs just told the whole company that was what they were doing, and felt like if they told the company and their customers, they were held accountable to do that ultimately. And so I think it's really about setting the intent when it's not scary, and then you can figure it out as you go along. You can get smart people in a democratic foundation organization or start a foundation when you get there. But for our partners, it was really about saying, is this something that you can set an intent to do, and can we do this together over time? And that made a big difference, because I believe people are essentially good, and they want to do well, and they want to work towards purpose-driven goals, even if they're also trying to make money.